So I just wanted to first, start with Jay and just get your sense of, you've been at this for about 7 years, trying to build this company and change this industry. What's giving you your competitive advantage right now?
You know, when we started, I don't know if I'm on or not. When we started, the challenge for us was were the tools, were the intellectual property, was the capital industry, and was the workforce, wherever we wanted to go, capable of responding to a digitally based innovation in the vehicle industry.
Yeah.
So, those 4 things have individually come along. Capital's probably been the most difficult.
Yeah.
The other thing that I've found recently is sort of the myth of Shenzhen has become something that's to be grappled with.
And what is the myth of Shenzhen?
Well, the idea that a global supply chain can deliver products from Foxconn or from PCH. One of the things that we've begun to discover very much is sort of there's a law of physical size, and we've begun to take this mantra very recently of to make local big, you have to make big local. And that has really just become a truism that we've found. So there have been a number of things, recognition of the size of the product and what it takes to make it and how that almost has to be made locally.
Yeah.
And then just the transformation in capital formation to be able to make these things happen. Crowdfunding wasn't around when we started. I think crowdfunding is critical to the evolution of hardware.
Yeah.
Because there is no venture capital infrastructure. There's probably 1/100,000th of a people that are out there that actually understand investing in hardware compared to the people that invest in software. I think Mark Andreessen is one of the great liars of this industry.
Yeah.
And I mean that in the best of ways. He's incredibly intelligent, but his feelings of software overshadow the importance of what it means to make hardware that is enabled by software. And so I think that there's a lot of transformation and doublespeak that happens that needs to be sorted through. Those are the difficulties that we've had to deal with.
Yeah, yeah. John, how about you?
So for us, we've had an interesting transformation, with starting the firm, getting investment from a global firm, Havas. And I think what we've learned is that, over the last, I guess we've gone for 4 years now, is that it's great to do campaigns like we did for Harley, and that's still bread and butter of what we're doing. But really, we're more interested in how we integrate the new with the old, and then build the software to actually build an operating system. So can you take the way you go to market with advertising and get consumers involved in the creation, placement of the media, and put that all in a box? Is there an agency in the box? Can you create a GitHub, if people know what that is, a GitHub for the creative services business? And that's what we're really focused on. One of the things we've learned in this journey in open is that, I guess this is something I've come to 6 months ago, is that there's an arrogance of the new, right? That this solution is the only solution, and certainly I've been a victim of that. But we've been doing a lot of things. We just did all the new packaging for vitamin water, smart water, and fruit water for a Coke. And no matter how you can apply, digital technology to solutions, crowdsourced, getting a lot of people involved, it still takes one person to shape those pixels to actually design that and implement that design for a global scale. So part of being open is being open to the fact that some of the tools from traditional analog work still work.
Yeah.
That's kind of the where we are, and the part of the journey that we've been on. We're growing really, really quickly, and it seems to be working pretty well.
Right.
So.
Gustavo, what's your perspective of this digital transformation?
Well, I came from a agribusiness sector. Agriculture is a traditional sector, a family-owned sector, and the challenge is how to change from a family-managed business to a professional managed business. And the challenge was how divide the relation between the property of the land and the manage of the land.
Yes.
And how to get it with intensive use of technology and intensive cultural change. And I'm working during the last 30 years in that matter.
Yeah. Allison, you're in a software company, Intuit has been formed, and so as you sort of see all this hype, and you've lived in Silicon Valley, and now you're back in Boston, what are you seeing that's actually really different versus just a lot of hype?
It's an interesting question. So Intuit is a company that is probably best known originally for desktop software products, and now we've really made the transformation to the cloud, but of doing tax software largely in the US and small business accounting software. And I think there's patterns of low-end disruption and of inventors observing pain that they want to solve and applying new technologies to solve them. Yeah. I still think there's, the insights of someone has the knowledge to see a pain that they get motivated to solve, and do they have the instinct to, whether within a company or in a new company, to solve it in new ways. But certainly, as a company, one of the things we obsess about is how do we stay incredibly mindful of, attempting to observe where we're about to shoot ourselves in the foot and be willing to do it first, perhaps. Otherwise, someone else will. And how do we keep being willing to disrupt ourselves and risk that as some of these transformations have occurred, where the new online might be cheaper than what we were used to. It may be new channels or whatever else. So those are some of the things we try to think a lot about.
Can you give an example of one of the points to make is Nokia and BlackBerry were big technology firms. It wasn't as if they were not, they were making smoke signals, right, or selling wood for smoke signals. They were big technology firms, and yet they stumbled in this transition to a digital ecosystem. So what are you seeing in your company that both scares you, but maybe also gives you a bit of hope?
Yeah, well, some of the trends we now see are much more about crowdsourcing and how you get ideas and insights from others, and are not so closed, and another of what's happening with big data. And so or maybe one example on the big data side. So in the small business market, we have the benefit of access to the books and at least at the aggregate of 6 million small businesses, and pushing ourselves to think about what could we do differently given that. And one of the things we observed was that 60% of our businesses had applied for small business loans, and 70% of them were denied. And our mission is to help small businesses succeed. And gosh, that seems like a problem in terms of access to capital for the small guy. And started exploring, well, is there a way for us to play leveraging the data we have? And what we've now launched is essentially a small business lending marketplace, but where for lenders who have very particular views of the small businesses they want to lend to, but federal law says if someone applies, they have to process the application, which is quite expensive. But they may never want to see a small business who's been around less than 3 years. Well, given the data we know, we can match to lender-specific needs, which increases the acceptance rate for small businesses. And given our data, we've also started to learn some predictive correlations with likelihood to be willing to repay. So we're now at a point where we're turning away lenders. We have more lenders wanting to get on our platform than not, and where we're getting much better success rate for our customers in terms of getting loans. Yeah. So an example of trying to transform a classic software company to a company thinking about what data enables.
Sure. Mike has a question, so.
Yeah, Allison, could you talk about, and I'm going to get to this a little later on, Intuit started as a pilot company.
Yep.
And it's now a multi-sided platform.
Yes.
Could you talk about that transition and how the sort of the leadership organization challenges going from a product firm to a platform firm?
I'd say we're still in the journey. But again, trying to observe some of the places when we've won, why we've won, and then how do we apply it going forward. I was leading our QuickBooks business when Microsoft entered twice, and gosh, in a moment of panic, Microsoft's about to bundle an accounting product for free with their Office products. Holy smokes, I'm competing with the biggest guys in the world. They eventually exited that market. But one of the things I think as we reflected on that we had understood, but perhaps not as well as we even could, was that the relationship between a small business and an accountant is an incredibly important one, and in terms of how they interact. And I don't think Microsoft ever got that. And the fact that we served both the accountant and the small business and had a bit of a network community across those two, and the richness with which we could serve both because we did. So increasingly with observed behaviors like that and looking at software networks, we are now much more actively expecting the entire organization to play as one and looking for those crossovers between what we do in personal finance and what we do in tax, what we do in small business and what we do with accountants. And really trying to build those ecosystems. Also opening our platform at this point. So a big mind bender for us is, opening up to, we have a payments and a payroll division, but opening up our small business platform, believing will be better if we enable the small business to plug in with anything. It's their data. And so now whether it's Square and payments or ADP and payroll, they can all plug and play with that data, and we believe will be better for playing in the middle of that ecosystem. So a couple of the mindset shifts, but still a journey, some definite executive debate that gets you there.
So Jay, what are you seeing? I mean, you're in many ways a strange company, right? You're like a community, you have software, you have hardware, and you're making stuff and selling stuff. So what are you seeing in terms of digital transformation that if you were to sort of tell this audience, which is concerned about economic development, how to foresee the world and what kind of investments to be making in both capital, human capital, as well as intellectual capital and so on?
It is such a luxury to answer that question. So, I mean, we're a strange company, fair enough, because people see what they want to see. And we're a product company. We design, build, and sell vehicles, full stop. How we do it is so different for people. And so I think in my deepest, darkest moments, when I think about what I'm seeing and what worries me or what excites me, it's the fear of Friendster. Nobody wants to be Friendster to somebody else's Facebook. But what makes me feel good about that is I listen to John and I think about some of the other things that we've talked about so long, is that there's this virtual treadmill that we stepped on as a company. And what that means is we became a platform for innovation, which is not what BlackBerry was, but is very much what Intuit has made itself into. And that treadmill, the reason why I call it a treadmill is if you can keep up with it, then you can birth amazing businesses. We're not birthing products as much as we're birthing whole product lines. And so we're a technology company that designs, builds, and sells vehicles. And what I think is that if you can optimize yourself to listen to the signal within the noise, if you can optimize yourself to listen to the signal within the noise, if you can build a machine that can birth these lines of products, then you'll win. And I think that the winners happen in those sectors. We have a national network in the United States that's just gone forward and built this national network for manufacturing initiatives. I think it's wrong-headed. And the reason why I do is because it's based on capability, not based on passion. And when you put small businesses together that are interested in getting a loan for their small business, that's a platform of passionate-based people that want to do the same thing. If you ask people to get around, hey, how do saws work, or how do injection molding equipment work, that's a very small passionate-based community because they're not thinking about the end product or line. And so for me, the digital transformation is about becoming that platform so you don't become Friendster, so you don't become Nokia. When you look at Apple, to me it's a paradox. They were a platform, have been a platform for innovation, but only in their own ideas. The App Store is anathema to the way that Apple built, and it allowed them, I think, a life extension, but it's dangerous because they're not really sourcing the ideas from a lot of people like Intuit does or like John has done in his campaigns. It's been a cult of a very, very top-down, hidebound organization outside of the App Store. And I don't know how that works. I wouldn't even begin. That would make me so fearful as a CEO that I would get upended just like Nokia has done. And so running that virtual treadmill and becoming a platform for people to birth whole product lines is what I think is what to invest in.
So say more about 3D printing, because you in the fall, I mean, a month ago, you built the first 3D printed car.
Great example. We came out 7 years ago when we birthed this business, and we said we are going to increase the speed of innovation in the vehicle world. We're design, building, and selling vehicles. We have to do that. And so we have, in order to be that platform, we've been on the constant lookout for new technology. And so people said, what about 3D printing? And a lot of people said it's a waste of time, it's tchotchke, it's little maker bots, that kind of thing. But we were looking at a different way because our community told us, hey, making cars is too hard, it's too many parts. So we were looking for a technology that could reduce the number of parts. That was what our community set us on, and the vector was making it out of a machine that could do it all at once. And that's what a digital transformation means. And we actually don't call it 3D printing a car, the trade press does, because that's sexy. What it really is digital manufacturing. We have an additive machine that puts the material down, and we have a subtractive machine, which is just as important, that takes the material away. But nobody wants to talk about digital cutting. They want to talk about digital printing. Yeah. That's okay, but it's digital in its basic. How
will that change the economics of manufacturing?
Just like Uber's changing the economics of the ride-sharing world, I think that is a fair equation when you look at the fact that every single one of us as manufacturers around the world has a spreadsheet that has capital cost and per piece cost. It's like, that's what I do. I'm going to spend $1 billion in CapEx, and then I'm going to make things for 20 cents when I'm making razor blades. And for us, what it's going to transform is this first column goes away. Gone. Zero in capital. None. I can't even emphasize it enough. And so it upends this, and it only focuses on the per piece cost. And that means that when you get rid of this, suddenly innovation just sprouts, because now people who have an idea for a battery or for an IoT car, Internet of Things, or industrial internet, or a new sensor, or a LiDAR, for example, or autonomous drive, or wireless induction charging. I could go on and on and on. If there's no CapEx, then I can throw one model out of the window when it doesn't work, and I can go to the next one. Yeah. You know, Elon Musk, put that in your pipe and smoke it. You know, that's what I believe in when you think of creating a platform. And I am capricious about it, yeah. Which is, I believe we set up Local Motors to be the dominant company in vehicle innovation. Because if you get there first and you're an open platform, there aren't two Facebooks. There's just one. And so that's what I think is up for grabs in so many passionate-based industries.
So Gustavo, what's the parallel in agriculture? What are you seeing right now?
Well, I like, do you have the PowerPoint? We are in the middle of a convergence between the digitalization and the genetic revolution. Do you have the?
Yes, right here.
Let me show, but the plants, we can create life. We can create the plants. We can create bacteria. Then we can design the plants to produce whatever we want. And we can produce different things, not only food or feed, medicines, energy, bioplastic for the cars, textiles, construction. And then we can design a plant like a factory. But these factories don't produce CO2, consume CO2, and use the solar energy. Then these are clean factories, no, for a new green revolution. And we have a lot of technologies like chemicals, ready to plant seeds, no-till farming, precision agriculture, then use different technologies like robotics, electronics, metal mechanics, biotechnology, microbiology, chemistry, nanotechnology. Then in the future, we can use the plant like factories. We will not need anymore the factories like we saw in the past, no? But not only in the farms, we can produce on the roof of your department, of your house, and you can produce in algae farms, and algae produce 90 times more proteins than soybean, for example, or 30 times more oil than soybean. And you can produce in new regions And you can produce without land in hydroponic system, no? All connected with IT, software. Well, this is because I think that we are in the door of a new, or the beginning of a new industrial revolution. And it's very impressive for us because this revolution will happen not in urban cities or urban areas, will happen in rural areas. Then it's a new challenge, hopeful for the rural areas where the poorness is still in the world. No?
Great. So I'm going to end now and pass the stage over to Mike. I just want to let you know that, so this is sort of the glimpse of the future, and many of these people are already living in the future. The issue, though, that I always come up with is that the past impinges on the future quite a bit. So Matteo Renzi, the Prime Minister of Italy, had a very nice way to think about this. What he said was that he said the Silicon Valley is the capital of the future, one of the capitals of the future, and Italy, he said, as a prime minister, is the capital of the past. And it was amazing that he said that in this interview. And I think what Mike is going to talk about now is the incumbents, the large firms that have a role in this, right? Who are living in the capitals of the past have to somehow deal with this. And this is gut-wrenching. This is gut-wrenching for those firms. Many of them disappear, right? And of course, there's a whole layer of regulation and government policy on top of this that we need to resolve as well. So we're going to step back. Mike's going to talk for a bit, and then we'll have some more panel session.
You ready to roll? So, good morning, everybody.
We'll just keep going until they tell us to stop.
Hello out there. I'm going to build on where we have been this morning and talk about incumbent firms. Great to be working with Bruce and my colleagues, particularly the practitioners. That first session talked about countries shooting themselves in the foot. I'm here to talk about organizations shooting themselves in the foot. And why is that? And more importantly, for the managers, leaders in the room, what you can do about it. I have spent a career looking at this. I'm an engineer by training. And I worked in the best, most profitable, most admired test equipment company on the planet. And while I was there, this company shot itself in the foot. This company went out of business. I traveled back and forth with a bunch of engineers from where I lived in Medford, Massachusetts, to West Concord, where this company was headquartered. And I would be talking with these engineers, and they could not understand why a firm filled with great engineers that had all the capabilities of getting into this new wave, this new technology, how can this company be going out of business so fast? I thought that engineers could do anything. I thought that the way to build capabilities, the way to build organizations is with fantastic science and engineering. It turns out that that is not the case. And I want to talk to you about my research pretty quickly, and I want to work with John in some detail because we've done this magnificent piece of work on the relationship between Havas, a large incumbent, the 6th largest advertising agency on the planet, headquartered in Paris and in New York, and their attempt to recreate themselves through victors and spoils. And they have just acquired John. They have a board and a leader who wants to recreate this industry, and I'm going to work with John on sort of what happened at Havas. Everybody, I'm going to try to get the group involved in my limited amount of time. what's the story here? Karim has already set this up. What's the same about IBM, Polaroid? Right down the street is Polaroid. Siebel, Kodak, General Motors. The story here is what? What are we talking about this morning? Say again? Disruption. This is destruction. Disruption, let me call it destruction. This is a story of firms shooting themselves in the foot. These are the best firms in their industry. They started their industry, fantastic numbers of R&D types. And then something happens. And they are at, I'm going to use some images here, if I can, this morning. These are firms that rocket up based on science. Whoa! Rocket up, and that's what happens to these firms. They rocket up and they rocket down. And then they drop like a rock at these junctures. And I just want to sort of brainstorm with the group. I want to try to get you involved. Why is it that great firms, when the world shifts, either because of technology, regulatory issues, or political issues, I'd like some just sort of speculations from the group. Why is it that great firms at these junctures almost always end up shooting themselves in the foot? Yeah, but why do they not adapt? They have all the money, they have all the talent. Why don't they adapt? They don't listen to the market? They lose touch with the consumers? Not really? Yeah.
Companies love talking about disruption and change and being revolutionary, but when it comes to it, they're actually still doing exactly the same thing that they used to, but they're just...
The difference between talk and action. This issue with the customers is a really important one. Firms frequently fail because they listen too much to their customers, and they get trapped by their customers. So it's not a customer issue. It's a knowing, doing issue. What else? What other big issue? Yeah, sir.
Culture, lack of entrepreneurial risk.
No. They have plenty of entrepreneurship. They have plenty of capital. These firms have gigantic amounts of entrepreneurs inside, you know, IBM or Polaroid. But somehow, like the Henry and Konas of the world, some of you know Polaroid, they actually invest in entrepreneurship at Polaroid, and Henry and his digital stuff at Polaroid gets destroyed. I want to sort of have us put our fingers on why is it, and it's not entrepreneurship, and it's not money, and it's not customers, it's something about talk and no action. Any other thoughts that come up, and we're going to work with John on this. Arrogance, yeah, arrogance. And where do you see the arrogance? So arrogance, we're going to talk about arrogance, and I'm going to really talk about arrogance with the board and with the senior team. And there's a gigantic difference between talking and action. These firms talk, they don't act. In the absence of acting, they drop like a rock. And then some of them, like IBM, is doing quite well. They rise from the dead. But where I want to go with you is back to General Radio. Why didn't General Radio, when they had all the capabilities, they could have done it and got better and better and better, rather they dropped. And many of you know a bunch of these firms are dead. Some of them have been recreated. And all the work that the people that Bruce and I hang out with at the Academy is around why is that, and more importantly, what can you do about it? And that's why this Havas VNS thing is so great. I want to get up a couple of ideas here, and then I want to go to John and Victors and Spoils. One of the strategic ideas I want to get on the table is different kinds of innovation, everybody. I'm going to ask you to think about incremental technical change that is better and better ways to do what you're currently doing. I want to talk about a strategic space that is partly technology and partly your customers. Incremental technical change is better ways of doing what you're currently doing. Architectural change is adding and subtracting components to the service or product that you're delivering. I run a program for HBS. An architectural innovation would be I take out a course and I add 2 other courses. And my participants need to hear an integrated program. I'm going to call that form of innovation architectural. And discontinuous is analog digital. It is a completely different way of delivering an automobile, if I'm an automobile company. So there's an axis of technical change from incremental, architectural, and discontinuous. And by the way, everybody, some of these discontinuities are competence enhancing. They build on my capabilities. This will be an important distinction in a few minutes with John. And some of these discontinuities are competence destroying. A competence destroying discontinuity is if I am a chemist doing crop protection in Basel, and someone does, through molecular biology for a farm, all my chemistry books are pretty much irrelevant because he's going to be working with a molecular biologist. That's a competence destroying change. And this y-axis is customers, existing and new customers. And I'm going to argue this morning that dynamic capabilities are rooted at the firm level in playing at multiple points in that space at the same time. This is the watch industry, and basically the move from mechanical watches to quartz watches, everybody. This is 10 years of pathology in Switzerland. This is the tire industry. And by the way, the quartz movement is a completely different way of doing oscillation that is way less costly, and as it's less costly, it goes to a different customer. So the swatches many of you have is a completely different product, rooted in quartz technology. If I'm a bias ply tire company, a radial tire company is the same customers, a completely different way of doing tires. And you see every tire firm in the United States shooting themselves in the foot. And by the way, in my prior example, hundreds of firms in Switzerland go bankrupt at the same time. 45,000 people lose their job. This is a customer issue. It's a gigantic managerial issue, I believe, is why they didn't move. And by the way, many of you know, after 1980, after they're bankrupt, Mr. Hayek comes in and gets them into the quartz movement, and they back up to being number one again. Again, I want to make these transformations here, not here. But there's something about organizations that gets in the way of that. And Bruce began that discussion a few minutes ago. The tire industry, this is the disk drive industry. Some of you know Clay's work. This is when you go from an 18-inch disk drive to a 14-inch disk drive. You go to a different customer. This is lock-in from your customers. The basic idea I want to get out right now, then I want to go to Havas. And we'll go to that video. Will be that dynamic capabilities at the firm level and the corporation level is rooted in exploiting what you're currently doing better than anybody on the planet, exploiting your existing business model, that is your existing farms, and exploring into an uncertain future. I'm going to argue that the way incumbent firms live over time and what my General Radio firm couldn't do is they got stuck in exploitation. And where I want to go with you is the great firms out there both exploit what they're currently doing, that's where you're making all your money right now, and figure out the future faster than your competitors. The problem is the better you are at exploiting, the worse you are at exploring. These are contradictory forces, and my way out of this trap is to build these inconsistent organizational architectures. I'll get there soon. But there is this challenge of doing several things well at once. And the better you are here, the worse you are here. And by the way, the better you are at exploring, the worse you are at exploiting. That's the juncture that partly John is at. Let me go to the video. I want to set up this. Any thoughts on what I mean by while we're getting the video set up? Because I want to actually show this with the Havas victors and spoils. There's something about doing well right now that traps you into the past. And as Karim set it up a few minutes ago, where I want to go with you is building organizations that can simultaneously live and celebrate the past and create the future better than their competitors. And what I've just said is completely inconsistent and paradoxical, and that's where I'm going with you in my chunk of time, is how do you live into this paradox? Yeah, let me take one question. Yes, sir.
Jay mentioned before that there's a negative correlation between CapEx and innovation.
Yeah.
When you talk about companies that are successful at present and past, but that somehow hinders their ability to explore the future,
Right.
isn't there, I mean, you mentioned a list of companies, all of which are capital intensive. They tend to want to continue leveraging their
Right.
existing assets over
Right.
and over and over and
Right.
over, and that, it would seem, hinders their motivation to explore.
Totally. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Actually, let me go back to the, before we go to the video, I want to so yes, but I think it's way more broad than capital intensive. So this is the Harvard Business School dealing with the web. I just want to, can you move me? I think where we are in this, keep going, in this digital issue, let's just sort of clip through here if you could, just keep on moving here. I want to go with this issue of digital and then move into with John. What's happening now, everybody? Let's keep on going. Right. I want to go to a little bit of work that Karim and I are doing at NASA. This is not digital. This is not capital expense. This is one of our participants, the senior physician. Let me just rephrase things a second. I think prior to 2002, my field, the field that Bruce and I are in, knows the answer to my carpool question back when I was an engineer. I think the world of the web and modularization and computational power increasing and cost decreasing changes the game completely. Let me give you an example of that, and then I want to go to Havas. So Jeff Davis is a senior physician at NASA. He's in charge of keeping astronauts safe in space. Karim and I are talking to him on one of our executive programs, and Jeff thinks it's cute. Jeff thinks that open source is cute, but it's not for NASA, because NASA has scientists, and we have labs, and this open source stuff is for the rest of the world, but it's not for him. Karim really pushed him pretty hard and said, hey, like, Jeff, like, relax a little bit. Why don't you just experiment with some of these ideas? These are from Jeff Davis. These are his most technically challenging problems. Life Sciences, NASA, 2009. There they are. My favorite example is sunspot prediction. Take a look. It turns out if you launch an astronaut into space and a sunspot storm occurs, this astronaut is in great risk. They've been trying to predict sunspots for decades. And Jeff has 2 laboratories of heliophysicists doing sunspot prediction. And in 2009, the prediction rate, the hit rate, is like 50-50, as in no progress on this research thing. Now take a look. He posted through an incentive to the community, December 22nd, 2009. He closes the competition, March 22nd, a few months later, 600 solutions, everybody, for free. 11 turns out are fantastic, and he sends a check to a retired mechanical engineer in New Hampshire, a gigantic gentleman with a cat on his shoulders. They send him a check, $30,000. Problem solved. This has nothing to do with capital expenditure. This is when you open up your organization to the world, and the world has free time, this surplus that Bruce was talking about. Someone at the periphery, that's what a good portion of Karim's, someone at the periphery, not a heliophysicist. A heliophysicist doesn't solve this problem. Someone way at the periphery solves this problem, essentially for free. If you're Jeff Davis and you have solved the problem in a few months essentially for free, this is what I think about as Jay's work. I think the web is a process revolution. It's doing the same thing. That Jay is doing the same thing in the automobile world essentially for free. This is Fordism on steroids. It's not that the research is being done differently. Let me say it differently. It's not that the research is different, it's being done differently. This is a revolution for firms. And the issue for Jeff Davis is how does he deal with this? And he doesn't deal with it well. Let me go to Havas. So let's go to Havas. Can we go back to the Havas video? Yeah. I want to set up this discussion with Havas and Victors and Spoils. I have no idea where I am with my time with this group. What's my timing like, everybody? I'm just going to keep on going. Yeah, good luck with 4 minutes. I want to get this video up with David Jones. Let's go to David Jones, CEO of Havas. This is the CEO of Havas, and he is so right. The audio.
To be on, and you have a dotted line down the middle, and on the left-hand side, you have brands, as you can imagine, like QuickBase, Second Life, Kodak, Polaroid, and depending upon how harsh you want to be, you could probably add in a Nokia and BlackBerry. And then on the right-hand side, you obviously have the brands like Amazon and Google, and Facebook, Apple, obviously, but also brands like IBM. And I think IBM is a very interesting example because what they have managed to do is they're one of the few companies who sit on the right side of that line who dramatically reinvented their business. And they left the PC world and become a sort of one of the architects of, or the backbones of the digital world. And so very simply, from a Havas perspective, we look at that and say, we need to dramatically change. What we want to be is the best company in the world at connecting brands with people using creativity, media, and technology.
So this is David Jones, and I'm just going to, when I go, I'd like you to bring me to which side of the revolution. He has support from the board to transform Havas, and he wants to be on the right side of that revolution. He sees the revolution happening, and the way he's going to execute the revolution, one piece of it, is through the acquisition of Victors and Spoils. He has board support. Is that fair to say, John? He has board support from the Bolloré family. He gets it. John is the first crowdsourced agency out there really successful. And he has all the money, and the customers want this. This is a setup, and Karim and I are simply going to document the beauty of the transformation of Havas. That is the way we got into Havas. We're going to document, by video, the transformation of Havas. Let's go to the next.
With which things come and go, and it changes, and there are new channels, and consumers are chasing new things. The fact that a lot of the people that are leading the businesses are not digital natives, so it's not something they're incredibly, it's not the way that they've consumed media. The fact that there are new competitors every day, every minute. The scale of the amount of data that people are generating that we need, I think, as an agency to be able to deal with for our clients. It's just all new, and it's all moving really fast. And people are scared.
And our industry is, sadly, we are changing slower than our clients, and also changing slower than the consumers who are supposed to talk to. So we need to really, really change fast. It's not something nice to do, it's something we have to do.
Can you pause that? Pause that for 1 second. Right now, I want you to pay careful attention to Mercedes Erez. Mercedes is one of the most powerful creative types in Havas. Any predictions about where she would be on John Winsor and Victors and Spoils? She's behind, the Evian commercial series advertised. She's behind the Evian series. This is a brilliant, creative person. Any predictions from the group as to where she would be when she's introduced to John Winsor and crowdsourced innovation? You're the chief creative person.
She's conservative.
She's conservative.
Because she's very comfortable in her space.
She is brilliant. She's at the top of her game. She's like the scientist at NASA. Pay careful attention. Speaking in French, pay careful attention to how she labels victors and spoils. Let's go to the video.
Important, elle a impacté en bien et en mal, comme toutes les choses de la vie, très fortement, et parfois elle a déstabilisé et elle a inquiété, ce qui veut dire qu'on a encore du chemin à faire pour trouver la bonne route. Nos clients en particulier ont pensé que c'était très important, mais ils ne savaient pas très bien pourquoi ni comment. Et nous, à l'agence, on s'excitait parfois un peu, sans savoir exactement si nous n'étions pas des apprentis sorciers. Parce que les autres médias ont aussi et continuent à avoir un rôle. Donc notre intelligence, c'est de comprendre qu'est-ce qu'a apporté réellement le digital.
What did you see with Mercedes? I want to get to... what did you hear from, what did you see, hear, feel from Mercedes Erez? Readiness to meet a challenge. Self-criticism? Lead what challenge? Who, she was self-critical of herself? Again, I realize I'm pushing pretty hard here, everybody. But this is a woman who knows what she's doing, who's proud of what she's doing, and the word she uses to describe what John represents, did you get that? Sorcerer's apprentice. What does that mean when she uses the word, John is a sorcerer? What does that mean? John, what does that mean? You're a sorcerer's apprentice. He's the devil. Dangerous magical thinking. We do not yet know what the big deal here is of crowdsourcing, and we're really good at what we're doing, and the language she's using is, this is a devil. And by the way, I should have mentioned it. There's a gigantic organization. John is here, the leader of Victors and Spoils. He's also asked by David to be the Chief Innovation Officer of Havas. This devil, sorcerer, is being brought in to be the Chief Innovation Officer of Havas. Everybody, do you see a nightmare playing out here? This is going to be a very dark story for the integration of Victors and Spoils. Some of the senior leaders have labeled him a sorcerer. He has taken the position of Chief Innovation Officer. This cannot possibly work.
This technology has commoditized her expertise
and
made her less special.
Makes her less special. Commoditization. The masses are doing the work. It's not Mercedes, it's the masses. Let me go to one other thing, and we'll get John to talk about what perhaps could have been done differently. Could you go to Chris? This Chris right here. This is the COO of Havas.
We are a very entrepreneurial company, and we're frequently saying that the last thing we wish to be is WPP, because WPP is a very, is to us a very financially constrained company in which they don't encourage brilliant creative talent to flourish. So people feel that they're working for a large, financially well-run organization, but the creative stars tend to feel, I want to go and run my own agency, I want to go and have the excitement of my own responsibility, where I'm not constantly having financial people telling me what to do. So I think the success of Havas, and the reason I've been 30 years with it, is that we're quite good at ensuring that the individual advertising agencies and the creative people who are key in those advertising agencies feel as if they're running their own agency, responsible for that, entrepreneurially can build their business, but they're part of a network which provides the ability to run clients globally, which provides tools, resources, strategic planning, and other global resources that you wouldn't get if you were a single agency working within a single market.
What's his point of view on this digital revolution? And later on, by the way, he talks about John, and he says what John does is sort of like 100 monkeys. Every once in a while, the crowd will do something that is creative, but it's sort of like 100 monkeys. What's his point of view on crowdsourced generation of content? What's his point of view on revolution? Because where I want to go with you, everybody, is firms renew themselves through revolutions. And John represents the future. And I just wanted to, when you look at this video of most of the leaders of Havas, they are talking about highly decentralized, we do our thing the old-fashioned way, we have these creatives, and John is the devil and 100 monkeys. And he's going to get clobbered by the organization, and eventually, the end of this case, it's so graphic, is David Jones leaves the organization. And this digital revolution is actually not. I'd like to ask John, yeah, come on up, John. Let's do this together. I'm going to code this as an organization, back to this gentleman's point. They know what to do. They have all the talent. They have all the technology. They have all the capabilities. If Bruce was here, Bruce, this is not a capability story. This is a story of change. And the messenger is getting shot. Is that, let's sort of talk about that, John. How come? How come? What could you have done differently, and what was your role in getting shot?
Well, I think I thought that I could make change. I think I assumed that David was really up for it, and he had the support of the bureaucracy. You know, in retrospect, I think that David's real desire, probably subconsciously, was he wanted to do more, create more change in the organization, but yet he couldn't be both positive and negative. So he put me in a role that allowed him to be more spacious, to allow him to be better. We talked about that, and I was fine with that. I have no problem being provocative and pushing the envelope. I think what both David and I underestimated was in the end, the bureaucracy got rid of him. Let
me push a little bit. So partly the bureaucracy, and partly, and let me just stick with Mercedes. And where was the creative crowd? And the creative crowd in an advertising agent, they have all the power. They are behind the magic of Havas, and it truly is magic. Where were they on this?
No, they hate the idea that whatever somebody said earlier, it takes away their specialness, right? Their reason for being is to win awards and to, a lot of times creatives and agencies really wish they would be fine artists, but they couldn't make it, so now they're commercial artists. And there's this deep self-loathing that they couldn't make it on their own art. So they resent the fact that somebody outside the system can do what they do.
Is there anything, and I'm getting the 1 minute thing, is there anything that either you or David could have done to increase the probability that this crowdsourced revolution would have taken hold at Havas?
Yeah, I think that I probably shouldn't have been Chief Innovation Officer, that they should have made a smaller investment. I mean, since David left, things have worked out great. I have no, even though I'm Chief Innovation Officer, I have no day-to-day involvement in that role. Since then, we've gone from bumping along and growing a little bit to this year we'll grow 270%. We've created 1 billion impressions for our clients, which is probably 10 times more than any other agency in the network, although we're tiny. and we've won more creative awards.
Is there any way to have gotten the creatives, the old-fashioned creatives, to have coded you as not the devil? Because partly the issue, everybody, is the coding of John.
Yeah.
And where I want to go is, can he be coded as a complement, not as a substitute?
Yeah. Yeah, I think what's interesting is that the word, you know, I've written a few books, and when Jeff Howe and I were talking originally, the word crowdsourcing meant one thing. It morphed into something else and something much darker. You know, every agency uses a lot of freelancers, so they really crowdsource things. But it's a lot of it is the terms that are used. I also think that when we started at Victors and Spoils, we were determined to be a disintermediator. Mm-hmm. And the reason we did that was we thought we'd win business. The day we started, New York Times ran an article about us, 700 people joined our crowd, and Dish Network, the television satellite company, gave us their TV campaigns. So it was a very successful first week in business. In retrospect, to really make change, I think there should have been, I should have had more of a perspective kind of re-intermediation. The idea that how do we build technology like we do to support the current paradigm, to make not a revolution that attacks them, but more of an evolution? How do we help build the bridge to the future for them? I feel like it's a generational thing that a lot of people still, my age, wouldn't have come across the bridge, but a lot of younger folks wouldn't have followed their own leaders and started using it. That's happening for sure, and that's where it's going to go.
Great.
But it's, I don't hold out much hope for firms like Havas to make it there.
Great.